Good evening, Razorback fans. I want to welcome you to the one, the only Hawg Talk podcast, live from the Sterling Soap and Roastery Studios, part of the Believe in Buzz radio networks, where you can hear us on all podcast platforms, as well as Buzz 2 106.7 in Central Arkansas. So please like, rate, and review our podcast. And all live shows are presented to you by Arkansas Brewing Company in downtown Ozark, which just celebrated their 2-year anniversary of being open. I'm Porter Hayes, and alongside me is Adam Hall, and we're also brought to you by Bet Online, your number one source for all your betting needs. Get the latest odds and lines, matchup reports for baseball, boxing, golf, MMA, and more. Bet Online continues to be the fastest and easiest way to place your wagers, including live betting and your favorite casino or card games available to play right from your phone. Head over to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and get in on the action. Remember to use the promo code BLEAV for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, where the game starts. And tonight we are going to break down the Arkansas Razorbacks schedule. We're going to give our predictions. Adam, I think before we started recording, we're very similar on the predictions. I think we're a game or two where we could flip-flop, a lot of toss-ups. Just when you really look at this schedule as a whole, how difficult was it for you to really kind of put pen to paper and predict how this season would unfold?
Oh, there's, solid 4 to 5 games that I left intentionally blank for a little bit, filled up my others that were kind of, I knew what I was going to go with either way. Some of them, even writing a W or L was still kind of tough to do, and I'd second guess myself. And I'm pretty close to where I was back in late July. But just giving some more thoughts, some teams have come out with who their starting quarterbacks are going to be. So, it's some of it's going to be a toss-up still.
When you look around the league, that seems like you're talking about the uncertainties. There's a lot of quarterback battles. There's a lot of, schools that are used to have. Look at Alabama and Georgia. They're not on Arkansas' schedule, but you point them two teams out right off the bat. You look at the quarterbacks they've had in the past, and now they're both. And that just shows you the depth and the strength that those teams are, because they're without a quarterback really when it comes to an elite quarterback, and they're still picked 1 and 2, whatever, site you want to go to or flip-flop them. But then when I'm going through this schedule, there's a lot of W's I put on this because you have to win them. That's and just by chance, you're 4 non-conference. If you want to have a successful season, you look at Western Carolina, Kent, BYU, and Florida International. Those are must wins. If you're wanting to progress and go beyond of your season last season, you have to win those games. Then you have the toss-ups. But then we throw the vaunted A&M game in Arlington. You're throwing in that game at Florida, and then that 4-game road stretch if you want to include the A&M. It makes it very difficult. What you're hearing from the coaches, and I'll say this before we break into it, I'm very pleased. I love the fact that we are hearing from the coordinators a lot more this year. We're hearing from Enos. We're hearing from Deke. We're hearing from Travis. We're hearing from all the guys, not just Coach Pittman every single day doing coach speak on the practice reports. So we're really getting in depth, and especially with, places, Big Trail Nation, Hogs Plus, we're really getting in-depth looks at what's going on. It's still coach speak. It's still, just running drills, but it gives you a better of idea when we've talked about, man, I wish we could see more of what's going on. So we, for us who breaks down the schedule, and I feel like we've actually got a lot of that this year.
Oh yeah. And something that you hear from head coaches and not so much coordinators, I don't feel like, but I think it was Monday, Enos was with Tara on Hogs Plus and talked about that they had 9 practices at that point, 7 of which were install days, and they didn't have to have, for the first time in his coaching career, an off day so that they could recover from everything that they were throwing at them. And, you go back, and if you want to play both sides, it's like, oh, is the coach just saying that? He didn't have to say that. And that's kind of my whole thought behind it, was he didn't have to specify that one stat. And it's, it's promising to hear versus getting into October like the past, and we hadn't had 30% of the offense installed yet. by our boy Chad Morris.
When they asked him that, I was dreading. I was like, please don't. Please. Yeah. I think Jackson Collier put that out there of like something, and I was like, when he was up at the podium, I was like, you better not say 30. But yes, a lot of that, when you're talking about, there's things where he could have said stuff where we could have put, read between the lines of, okay, there's still, but that just shows you when you have a guy like KJ Jefferson, you have a guy like Rocket Sanders, and then you look at the defensive side of the ball, you got Pooh Paul, you've got your guys, Landon Jackson, you've got these guys that I think you have a solid 2 or 3 not senior, but I think you have a 2 or 3 captain-like players. And you can even throw Hudson Clark in there. He's had his ups and downs, but dude, that guy's been through the fire.
He has. And I mean, you can say, we all talk, or I see a lot of talk out there, negative against Hudson Clark. But when it comes down to it, and, I talked Friday with Dollar for quite a bit from Hawg Sports. We talked on the phone for about an hour, and he was one that we really hit on that a lot of times when it looks like Hudson Clark may have gotten beat, in reality, somebody else got beat, and Hudson Clark was there trying to pick up the slack or whatever the case may be and get to the guy. And so in reality, I think it was Pro Football Focus put out their returning secondary ratings, and he's ranked number 2 for a reason. He puts himself in position.
Well, and we talked about that though. When you were playing a safety position and you get out of position, you're used to playing a zone, you're a safety, you're a zone, and you're playing man, or you're trying to cover, that again, when we went back and talked about putting a center fielder and right fielder, it's the same thing. And I think this is what I'm going to pose, and I know this has been a question. I don't think if he would have got that scholarship right after that pick game, I don't think he would have had the pressure on him. I think if he would have had that success and then just rode out the season, and then they gave him the scholarship going into the next season, but the theatrics right after that, they gave him a scholarship, and that put the pressure on him. And then, the depth sets in and people are getting hurt, and he kind of fell off. But like you're saying, it's not all his fault. But I think that was a lot of pressure, and it was kind of a curse a little bit. And I'm not saying he would change his mind and he would take that scholarship.
Oh, definitely. But just us as fans, especially with that 3 interceptions against Ole Miss, and then immediately, we see the scholarship given out, the staff put out the video of it. It was a big thing. So I get it, but it's, that was kind of a curse afterwards, because then all eyes were on him, especially from the fan base.
Yeah. But that's the thing. It comes with it. Everybody just want him to get the scholarship. You got it. But hey, look, you're an SEC safety, scholarship safety. Now you got to produce. Now that target's on your back. What are you going to do with it? It's almost like be careful what you wish for kind of thing. But you got the confidence of your defense to really help. You've got other guys you can lean on, barring everybody stays healthy. And, when we go into this schedule again, we look at your first game. Of course, it's Western Carolina in Little Rock. I really think we can both mark that down as a W. Unless just the wheels fall off between now and September 2nd. But I'm going to say that they need to win that one convincingly. They have to. I say keep all your guys in there as much as possible, unless Western Carolina starts throwing some cheap shots and trying to, do things to get our guys off the field. But
I look at that game kind of like the Nicholls State game from years ago that, we kept the starters in, I think, until midway through the third quarter or so. And they were up 56-0 or 56-3 or something at that point. So I think it's keep it going, especially so that the team can have those full game reps, not just scrimmage or practice. And then, come halfway through the third or fourth quarter, if everything is going according to plan, that's when you put in your backups and get those guys off the field just to get ready to keep going until the next week.
Well, and another thing we're not even accounting for. Look at the times of those first 2 games, and look at the weather that has been going on.
Yeah, so you're looking at heat index 115 probably on that field, if not more.
So, I mean, I understand, getting your guys, ready to go, but you got to really take into account of that too. And that's where your coaching comes in of, look, if you feel like he's getting gassed or he feels like, look, we got to protect our guys. We can't have anybody stroking out there. We can't, because this is going to be your 3 o'clock kickoff time for 2 games in a row and the adrenaline on top of that with the, heat index on the turf. And it's going to be, 4-quarter game. So that's going to where you also go into that because, of course, the next week, they got Kent State and then BYU's at 6:30. That's going to be a lot of it too, is making sure these guys are hydrated, making sure your walkthroughs, you're practicing, because it's going to be brutal. I mean, from now until mid-September, it's going to be brutal.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, I think we're going to see, you don't want to see it, but we're going to see a lot of issues in those games for cramps and whatnot. And how are they going to address it? How are they going to come back from it? So I think you take those first 2 games as you want to go balls to the wall, but at the same time, you got to protect the health of the players too.
That's where Monday through Thursday, Friday, you're going to have to be hydrated all the way throughout the week. And then I don't know how they do IV stuff, but you're going to have to do some kind of liquid IV to make sure you're hydrated, because once you get past, like, days like today, I was outside all day working. Once you get past that point to where your mouth is thirsty, it's too late. You're past that part of where you need to get hydrated. And that's where the importance of, I've got 2 8th graders and we're talking about practicing and making sure they're drinking a lot of water the night before, because you're preparing yourself for the next day, the night before. And that's going to be the importance of it, the nutrition, but that's where you've got a state-of-the-art facilities and your nutrition and your electrolytes and stuff and sodium. And that's going to be a lot of key of it.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, it's one of those, these guys are, you want to say they're trained to do this, and they are, but there's some oversight, I think, sometimes when it comes to the hydration and the nutrition. But at the same time, there's a lot of what ifs, unknowns when they actually get into game time, how their body's going to react when it's 115, 120 down on the turf.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like you might as well just open up an oven, stick your head in, and that's what it feels like. So, that's where something like what LSU has this year in the air-conditioned helmets, that's just.
Yeah, I've been unsure about that thing, because what happens, if one of those things short circuit mid-game or something or another. But, if it works for them and that gives them an advantage, so be it.
Exactly. So we pretty much got Western Carolina, Kent State as a win. Now, again, you have BYU sitting there at 6:30. It's still going to be warm, but you don't know what BYU is going to be bringing in because of, revenge from last year. But I think with what we've been seeing out of Arkansas, and look at what they did last year, you got all these players coming back, but the guys that were here last year are getting faster. They're getting stronger. They're not having to go back and revisit days. Everything's pointing me in the right direction of, it's not just Coach Peak, like you were saying. They are it starts in the weight room, and they're making progress. That's what has me excited to really, where I'm toggling between that 8-9 win season. And you got to finish up strong against BYU, because when we're talking about these must wins, you can't, and you also can't look ahead.
No, you can't. And I think BYU is the game that you put everything together before LSU. That's going to be your game that you look at, and you've got to say, okay, we have to play as perfect as we can play. No questions, no ifs, ands, or buts, and just go balls to the wall if that's what it is. Or if, you get into those struggles, and you kind of want to see some of those struggles if they're going to be them, just to see how you're going to adapt and maybe change your scheme if you have to. But again, I just think that's a game that it's a win. I would just like to see some of the loose ends tied up before or by the end of that game.
Yeah. Definitely, and that's where you get a little bit more comfortable with taking some shots. You were looking at really button things up, but also you don't want to give too much away your playbook, but you want to install your playbook at the same time. I think the BYU game is going to be one where, like you said, put it all together. But it throws me back to the old school BCS days of where, we're a team. You have to win by 40 to make sure you're up in the standings of that BCS. If you're a team like, say, Arkansas, you don't have the benefit of the doubt like a Bama or Georgia or Ohio State. Like, you have to win all your games by 40. I think this is how to send a message to the SEC, other teams, and to send a message to themselves, more importantly, that they're not going to be squeezing games out against BYU. They're going to take care of business, and they're going to win these games by 21, 28 points. I think that's going to be a thing that just because the competition's getting harder, your progression and your scores don't get any less. Like, you treat the BYU game just like you did the Western Carolina game, or vice versa. And I want to see at least 14, 17, 21-point wins in all three of these first games.
Yeah. I mean, you want to have that confidence, I think, going to LSU. I don't think you want any questions. So, I mean, you want your confidence. You want your head held high. I mean, you want some swagger, some cockiness going into Death Valley.
And the BYU game is going to be, because you got Kent State showing SEC Network, and then BYU is going to be on ESPN too. So that's going to be another little, how at night you look at the Texas game when they beat Texas, a couple years back. ESPN 2, having that night game on ESPN, that's going to add another little factor to having the hype around it before you do. And this has just been rumors thrown around, and you know how that goes, but there's reason to believe that if both LSU and Arkansas are both undefeated at this point, they'll more than likely get to 2:30 game. It's one that, okay, that's nice, but I would much rather have a 2:30 game than that 6:30, 7 o'clock game, because we know how Death Valley is at night, and that just makes it that much harder to get ready to play in that stadium.
Oh yeah. I don't see, I think in years past there's been, we've had some of the 11 a.m. games in LSU just because of the state of our program or versus their program. But you definitely don't want that night game there, especially if that early in the season. Yeah. When there may still be some questions. I think you go into that game, though, if I'm KJ, with a little bit of chip on my shoulder, just for the fact that so many different outlets out there are putting Jaden Daniels so high ahead of him when it comes to quarterback rankings. Yeah. I mean, I think ESPN had Daniels at 15th and KJ was 30th on their top 100 overall players. And I mean, to me, that's almost a slap in the face.
Yeah. And so on your sheet, where do you have this game? Is this your first loss? Do you have this as your first loss of the season for Arkansas?
Yes.
This is the game that I've went back and forth on. Because it is LSU. Arkansas plays them all the time. I mean, very, very close. It is your first SEC game, but man, to me, when I'm breaking down this season, a lot of this factor that some aren't putting into it is, KJ's wanting to leave a legacy here. You know what I'm saying? He wants to. Him and Rocket, they're regarded as the top, arguably the top quarterback, running back tandem in the country. He don't want to just be remembered as just another Razorback quarterback. He wants to be remembered as the best. I think he's, that's a lot of what he wanted to come into. And I'm telling you, 60-40 wants me to pick them winning this game. I'm not, and this is not a prisoner of the moment. This isn't me knowing better than any other, but it's one of them things that I am putting a lot of emphasis on what KJ wants to do this season and fully healthy and rally this team. And you got to remember, look what this team's done without a true vocal leader.
Mhm.
KJ put his team on his back last year and did some amazing things, but they were without the stuff on the defensive side of the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And when we go through these rankings or these predictions, we're barring this is full health where we see this. I do have it as a loss in the end because just with oh gosh, I want to say a win just for the upset factor, but I just until it's going to be hard because LSU is going to be good. But the only thing is like, where are they going to be at defensively? Can they stop Arkansas? This is another thing that with these teams, when we're talking about, Arkansas's got some defensive issues, but you know what? Arkansas's got an offense now. And these guys at receiver are starting to really step up.
Yeah.
So
I think defense is going to be the biggest question until it's proven not to be.
Yep.
So, it's hard to not revert back to some of last year's train of thought just because we haven't seen anything else. We haven't seen an official product yet.
Yeah. And so if we're nailing me down, I do have this as their first loss. So I have them being 3-1 heading into that daunted A&M game in Arlington. And then you move into that game, and that's where I've got to win. I've got Arkansas to win. And when we previously were talking about this schedule of must wins, if you're going to go on this big 4-game stretch, if you're going to win 8 or 9 games this season, you have to split the LSU and A&M. Just my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you lose LSU and A&M, and then you still got Ole Miss and Bama and Florida to deal with, and Mississippi State, that's where things start getting tricky when it comes to we're looking at this 5-game stretch right there. If you lose to Texas A&M and then still got to go to Ole Miss, still got to go to Alabama, yes, you got Mississippi State, which is your homecoming at home, and then at Florida, you can't get yourself in a hole if you're wanting to get to that 9-win season. That's my take on it.
Mm-hmm.
So if I have to sacrifice one of those 2 games, of those 2 games, which one would I say they'd win? I'm going with A&M other than the LSU game.
And, it may ruffle some feathers, but I have that being loss number 2. That game haunts us year in and year out. I think A&M adding Petrino to the mix, that's going to be on a lot of people's mind, maybe not the players' mind, but it's going to be talked about more by the fans and the media than anything. But I think that in Bobby Petrino's head and his scheme, especially with having the athletes that A&M has, I think he's going to try to pull out all the stops.
Yeah.
And so, and that was a tough game, that one, and then one further down the list that we'll get to were kind of one of my 2 swing games that I hope it doesn't happen, but I just think it's going to.
Well, and the thing is too, when it comes to the quarterback play of Texas A&M, do they have the quarterback to give the ball to these athletes? Or are they going to have a quarterback that will outshine KJ? Will they have that guy that can? Because Bobby Petrino's offense is not an easy offense. You're still, you could be and we've seen what he did at Missouri State, but you still got to be able to run his offense. And that could where one mistake can cost you. We've seen how these games have went over the years.
Yeah, because I think they're named Wegman, their start. I think he was a true freshman last year, played in 4 games with them. But, it's like you said, is he going to be able to learn Bobby Petrino's playbook?
Yeah, so he's pretty much going to be a freshman. He's a sophomore, but technically, this isn't some 5th-year senior or some transfer coming in with the experience coming in. This is going to be somebody that's never started really in the SEC, and now you're going to be learning one of the offensive gurus' offense. That's going to be tough. But they got 3 games before it as well. So I mean, we'll see how that plays out. But I mean, we know, again, we're looking at the history of these games and these toss-up games where if this is going to be Arkansas's year to really impress and then get to that 9-win, possibly 10-win that some people are saying, you cannot go 0-2 against LSU and or A&M, because again, when we're looking at the history of this team, you lose 2 in a row, you start going on a downward spiral, then you could really find yourself 0-4 in the SEC really quick.
You could. And I mean, a lot of that too, or with my prediction on it, is being a little bit cynical of the past, that I feel like A&M quarterbacks typically seem to have one of the best games of their careers, whether they're a new quarterback or a seasoned vet, when it comes to Arkansas. And no matter who I don't know, it's just always been something that I feel like their quarterbacks always come to play when it comes to Arkansas.
Yeah.
So,
moving on to the Ole Miss game. I mean, this is another one that, this is what makes the SEC as difficult as the SEC is, because there's no off weeks. There's no, another game on the road. This is where you're coming off the A&M now, depending on how that game goes. And if the A&M game goes off that ending like it did last year, that could affect how this Ole Miss game goes. You can't lay an egg. I have this as a win. So I have them starting off 2-1 in SEC play. I don't think that Ole Miss has got the overall athletes. I don't think they've got the better team when you're lining these 2 teams up.
Yeah. That's where I've got it as a win. It's KJ's last game in the state of Mississippi. So he's going to have his family there, his friends there, on top of the Arkansas fans that do travel. I think this is going to be a game that KJ shows out, if there's going to be a game.
Yeah.
His last one in his home state. I think that's I just see Arkansas not necessarily handily winning this game, but convincingly win this game. And especially, I mean, I know Ole Miss named Spencer Sanders as their starting quarterback, and maybe he still will be by the time this game rolls around, because they chose him over Dart. But, I mean, he didn't show me anything necessarily at Oklahoma State that was just off the charts.
Yeah. And that's in a heavy offensive passing, no defensive league, and that's one of the things. You look at the Big 12, and it's almost like if you can't be a successful quarterback in the Big 12, how are you going to do when you're playing against SEC defenses? Because you even look at teams like Kentucky, you look at Arkansas, you look at Ole Miss, they've got stout defenses, and the balance, they're not exceptionally well on offense, they're not exceptionally well on defense, but overall, this isn't the Big 12. You're reading a whole different style of play. And with the Ole Miss game, you said it, this coming out party for KJ and how he wants to be remembered. You don't want to lose that Ole Miss game. I mean, when we're talking about, do you want to be 2-1, or you want to be 0-3, or you want to be 3-0? That's Cody has right now 3-0, possibly beating Bama. I mean, I think there's a lot of hype, but man, it's until it happens. They always have. That's the game that you look at and you're like, man, I could see us winning that game. Okay. Like you look at Alabama, they don't have Bryce Young. This could be a game where we can sneak up on a winning. And it's that Charlie Brown game where, Lucy's going to have him kick the football, and it could happen, because we don't know, if Arkansas would have stopped the zone read run last year, they would have beat Alabama. I mean, that's just, if they would have had the defense to stop him, and they don't have the elite receivers. I mean, I'm not saying that this is far-fetched, that the people saying that Arkansas could beat Alabama are crazy. It's just because it hasn't happened in forever. it's hard to write that W next to that until it's done. I mean, I did that with the A&M game until Arkansas, and the same way with Missouri. Until they beat these teams, it's hard to sit there and say they're going to do it. But they have. I mean, you look at if Arkansas wins that Bama game and they're 4-1 at that point in the SEC. Could you imagine Dixon Street?
Oh God!
The state of the fans, the state of the team, and it's almost like. Also, I mean, how would that affect moving forward? Because look, you beat a team like Bama. Look at Tennessee and how they reacted to that win. They kind of fell off a little bit when it comes to the SEC part of it, you know?
Yeah. And it's one of those, like you said, until Arkansas does it, it's hard to pick that game. I would love to see it, especially since we don't have Alabama on next year's schedule. Who knows if we'll get them, in 2025, since we don't know what that's going to look like yet. We've been waiting for what? This will be like 17 years since we've beat them. I think 2006 was the last time. So it's one of those that you want to get past it. I just don't see it happening. I know last year's defense was hopefully completely different from how this year's is going to look. But, when Milroe came in towards, like you said, that we couldn't stop them with the read options and everything they were doing. They, did what they wanted to, and it was just hard to watch at times.
Well, and it was that one big run that kind of thought everything, and he broke off on that third down and ran. It was like, okay, that was the deflating of the balloon, as you say, because it's like, okay, if we pin them deep, get the ball back and score, this is a brand new ball game, and then they break that off, and it was one of them game killers, and we see it all the time in basketball. When you're playing somebody that's better than you, you got to keep that momentum going in that run, because once you take the crowd out of it, once you take that emotion or you get knocked down so many times, it's hard to keep getting back up per se. But we're going to take a quick commercial break. After the break, we'll start with the Mississippi State game, kind of round out the rest of this schedule and break it down. We'll be right back after the break. Attention DIYers and home improvement enthusiasts. Are you searching for the right tools and the supplies to tackle your next project? Look no further than Mentor's Hardware Store. With locations in Ozark, Alma, and Clarksville, our vast selection of hardware and building materials is sure to have everything you need. Whether you're fixing a leaky faucet or building a new deck, plus our knowledgeable staff is always on hand to offer expert advice and guidance. And with our competitive prices and convenient online ordering, Mentor's Hardware Store is your one-stop shop for all your DIY needs. Visit us today and let's build something amazing together. Searching for premium brewery products that will take your daily routine to the next level? Look no further than Sterling Soap Company. Our handmade soaps, aftershaves, and balms are made with only the finest ingredients that give you the ultimate grooming experience. With a variety of scents to choose from, there's something for everyone. Plus, our products are crafted in small batches to ensure the highest level of quality. So why wait? Visit www.sterlingsoap.com or visit our retail store at 16 West Walnut Street in Paris, Arkansas. Shop our collection and discover the difference for yourself. Upgrade your grooming routine with Sterling Soap Company. Are you looking for a place to grab a cold drink and some delicious food? Look no further than Arkansas Brewing Company. Located at 201 South 1st Street in beautiful downtown Ozark, our establishment offers a wide selection of craft beers and tasty eats. But what sets us apart is our welcoming atmosphere and friendly staff. At Arkansas Brewing Company, you'll always feel like part of the family. So visit Destiny and Christopher Brockett and staff today and see for yourself what makes us the go-to spot for locals and visitors alike. Arkansas Brewing Company, come for the drinks and stay for the friends. Are you in need of legal representation? Look no further than the law offices of Robertson, Beasley, Shipley, and Robinson. As the oldest law firm in the River Valley, we have been serving our clients for over 100 years, with locations in Ozark, Fort Smith, and Spring. Our experienced team of attorneys provide expert guidance and advocacy in a wide range of legal areas, including personal injury, family law, criminal defense, and more. Trust in our history and experience to get the results you deserve. Contact the law offices of Robertson, Beasley, Shipley, and Robinson today at 479-782-8813.
That's 479-782-8813.
And want to welcome you back to the Hog Talk podcast. And we continue on our schedule breakdown. And that brings us to the Mississippi State game, where I know that with, of course, this being homecoming in Fayetteville, and I know Mississippi State, losing their coach tragically last year, it just, you don't know what this team's going to be. You don't know what, how they're going to overcome, with a new coach. And then, of course, competing. We know how hard it is to keep it going in the SEC. And when you're spitting in the mud and just trying to get back on top. Again, I got this as a win. It's just pure talent on both sides of the ball, and you're playing at home. It's going to be hard because, we don't know again. All of this also has to play of this is coming off of that daunted 4-game stretch. You're back at home. How do you recover from how you after that Alabama game? Is this something where you do upset Alabama? You come back and kind of lay an egg against, Mississippi State. I don't know, but yeah, I've got this as a win. Your first game back off that road stint, and get things hopefully back in the right direction at this point in time in the schedule.
Yeah, I have it as a win also. No matter the outcome of that Alabama game, I think that this game will be – I don't think it'll be lopsided by any means. I think, again, kind of like with the Ole Miss, KJ wants to win out against the Mississippis. It may not be a pretty game, but then you also have another quarterback in Will Rogers that a lot of people have rated higher as KJ. So I think it's another circled game for him. So even if you are beat up, even if maybe you're even coming off that high, if we do end up upsetting Alabama, I think Arkansas wins.
Yeah, and it's just we do put a lot of that, comes down to KJ, but this is his team this year.
Mm-hmm.
It's his going out party. We do it in a lot of other sports when we have these seniors that's been through thick and thin with this team. And, especially if also that, that Heisman talk that, this team, if they ride the ship and then they do upset A&M, you could lose that LSU game. And if you do beat A&M, Ole Miss, and Bama, if you go on and, you turn that in, instead of 0-3, you turned it into a 3-1 or 2-1 stretch. Now we're talking about KJ as potentially being a Heisman hopeful. Now, front runner and all that, I don't, we don't know how that will go, because I truly think a lot of that is politics when it comes to who the hype's behind. I'm sorry, you can't tell me that Caleb Williams was the best football player in last year. You cannot do anything to convince me that he should have won the Heisman last year. And we've seen it a lot of times. Does true best player in the country get the Heisman Trophy? And a lot more than not, they don't.
Yeah, and I think that you kind of hit it on the head with the KJ and the Heisman talk. I think that he's going to be thrown out there a lot in the conversation until it gets to really the finalist time. Because he's got one of the best touchdown to interception ratios in the entire country, and he has every year that he's been there. Is he going to run as much as he did with Dan Enos that he did in Bryle's system? I don't think he'll run as much, but I think he will be just as impactful when he does.
Yes. Well, and that's all going to be on how those guys behind him. And we know Rocket, but, DeBinion and AJ Green, how are those guys going to, when they get time, are they going to be, come in and get those runs? Can he trust them to get third downs, third and shorts, third and threes? Or if he's going to have to feel like he needs to do a lot of that on his own, then we're going to see him run the ball more. And that's where it's going to get scary, because if you're a 3rd and 3 and you can't count on your guy to get you a first down and you're going to have to start doing it yourself, they're going to crash down on him.
Yeah. And then, the nightmares go back to, against A&M when he, on the goal line fumbled it, 99-yard return. So, it's one of those that I know you want those guys behind him to have the confidence,
Yes.
just so that KJ doesn't feel like he must put himself in that position. But, as a leader and as a leader of that team, you're going to do it. But at the same time, like I said, you just want those guys, you want to have trust in those guys that you can make that decision to give them the ball.
Yes.
And I think with Rocket's size, and his speed and strength that he's shown, that, he's going to be that guy that gets them those tough yards, but also is going to break out a 30, 40, 50-yard run.
Well, and also the trust is, you got a little bit of the ego too.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you're the leader of this team, but you can't do it all on your own. You've got to rely on your guys because we talked about that, the trust. And I don't think that, if you ask him to have one playback, what would you have him back? I guarantee he would talk about that one play, jumping from the 4 or 5 yard line, and it turns into that fumble. But that's one of those plays that you're looking at that could have turned around the whole season, and we will never know because, of course, everything played out the way it did. But health, depth, of course, is your main focus this year. But I think with the strength and the conditioning and the way the guys have been getting stronger, they're able to install the playbook. They're able to not have to revisit things. These guys are getting it. Okay, there's another factor into this. If these guys are picking up, they're not going to be out of position.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to know where they're supposed to be at. Therefore, how many injuries does that prevent? Somebody being out of position or feeling like they have to go cover somebody, out of position, and they end up, or knee-jerk reaction, hey, I got to make this play, and now they're injured. That is going to be a big key this year when we talk about what you're picking up. And it seems like when we're breaking down this schedule and we've seen what we've seen or heard out of camp, it seemed like these guys are starting to get it. Mentally, from the mental aspect. We'll see on the field, but I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid at all, but I love what I'm hearing and seeing from the clips and the guys of just the mental aspect. And we want progression and everything that we have been able to see and that it counts, they've progressed.
Yeah, and I think this season that we'll see, like you're talking about with the coaches and stuff with this season and the new coaches that were brought in, it's Sam Pittman's guys that he brought in are all basically gone, minus one or two. So, I think that's brought a different element to some of these guys that they're not hearing the same thing day in and day out, especially on defense.
Well, and then that's the frustration you're talking about, like where the vets, if the vets are trying to get things down and they're trying to rally the troops, and then you've got these guys that you're having to keep on talking to, there goes the mentality of you're staying focused because now you're getting tired of the coaches trying to go talk to these guys because they're not getting it. You're not focusing on your task at hand because you're frustrated because you're not making the progress that you need to be making because other guys are holding you back. That's a huge deal when it comes to becoming a team. And I want to, when they were talking about the scrimmage and Sam Pittman was talking about, it was getting hot. It was getting physical. People were fighting it. You want that because people are fighting for their positions, and that lets you know.
Yeah, you want that chippiness, and I don't think you want the fighting necessarily that you're seeing in Colorado, and you've got Coach Prime, getting mad at his players that didn't join in on the fight. But like, Sam Pittman said, especially like in KJ, you want to see that chippiness. You want to see these guys get in each other's face and not just back down.
Yeah. Well, in KJ's spot is like, look, guys, you're not ruining this for me. And that's where I think, there's a time to be selfish and there's a time not to be selfish. And I think for him, when he's running these practices and stuff, and it's almost like if he feels like the team's holding him back when it comes to what this team could be, he has every right to be like, guys, look, this is my last year here. I'm going out and on the bank. I want to win. I want us to get to 9-10. They want to win every game. I want to leave here as this team that is forever talked about. I want to be up there with the Bobby Petrino teams and the Houston Nut teams and the 78 team. You want to be able to be mentioned with those teams. You do not want to have all this talent like KJ. And, man, what do you think about KJ? Well, they could just never get over that hump because they're going to look at that 9-win year previously as a fluke. That's the way. If this year is not successful, if it's not an 8-9 win season, what are they going to say about the previous 9-win year?
Yeah, it's going to be. I think that's exactly how it's going to be looked if they don't get to that mark this year.
Yeah.
So so right now going into the bye week, I've got us at 5-3. I think yours is at 6-2.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I've got Bama and LSU as the losses. Yeah, and that's like I said. I mean it seems like okay. Here we go again with these high win predictions, but from what I'm gathering, I mean, it's hard in some of these games not to pick them.
Mm-hmm.
I just look at the Ole Miss. I look at Mississippi State. You look at, even the A&M game. I don't think A&M's, and yeah, they got Bobby Petrino, but I don't think they're that much better than last year's team. And Arkansas has gotten better. As much as you want to say their depth or whatever, they're going to be better this year than last year. But yeah, the bye week, and I think that's going to be, that at Florida, you talk about a place where things have not went your way.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be a perfect time for a bye week.
Yeah, that's definitely. Put your Band-Aids on, get your new game plan if you got to change things up. You just went through a brutal stretch, so that week is going to be a big key to finishing out the season, licking your wounds, just getting ready to go for those final four games.
Yeah. I got this one as a loss. There's a curse around this game. There's just that black cloud that's over this game that is not allowing me to give Arkansas the W in this game. I've just seen too much crazy stuff happen when it comes to that Florida game in the swamp. You could be a mediocre Florida team and they're still tough to beat at home. And that, for me, this is where, again, I was going back and forth. Talent, do I think, if this game was in Fayetteville, I would give Arkansas the W.
Mm-hmm.
I put this solely on this being an away game that Arkansas loses this game.
Yeah, I went back and forth with this one because I think that we will see a potentially mediocre Florida team this season. I don't have the highest hopes for them, but this game in Gainesville, even with the bye week after that stretch, I have it down as a loss. I tried talking myself out of it. I went through every which scenario that I could. Well, Florida's wearing an alternate black uniforms for this game, so that's a curse. I'm like trying to make myself believe that that's going to be a curse for them, and I just can't do it.
Yeah. Well, and I'll say this. Look, this is the first. No, I'll go ahead and say it even because I think that LSU game is going to be close. This is going to be the first year in a long time that I've looked at a schedule and be like, okay, they're definitely not winning that game. Even the Bama game, and I have a loss. You could still go into that if Arkansas goes on a run and somehow splits that LSU A&M. They beat Ole Miss and then they got Bama. Mm. And if they contain Milroe, or if at that point Bama's just not good with Milroe and they're bringing in another quarterback and they're trying to break him in, there is a chance that Arkansas could potentially win that game.
Yeah, because that was my other swing game that I mentioned earlier with the A&M game, that I think these two losses could potentially go either way. I just had to make that decision to take the L on it whenever I had to put pen to paper.
Yeah. Then you move on to Auburn. Now this is where, that Mississippi State, you're coming off the bye, you got 4 games. Auburn at home, I think that's going to be a win. I don't think they're going to have enough to where I think they're going to be LSU 2 years ago. You know, not really have everything rolling. You don't have your players. You don't have, this is where the new coach, he's going to make waves, but I think it's going to take a year or two. I mean,
I think Hugh Freeze is going to take a lot of the attention for this team that may not be the greatest thing for a lot of these players. We'll see. I have it down as a win. I know they named Peyton Thorne as their starting quarterback. He's the Michigan State transfer. But again, I just look at a new quarterback, regardless that he was a former starting quarterback. I don't see him being that great, especially in Hugh Freeze's type of offense that he's known for. Peyton Thorne just wasn't that impressive at Michigan State.
Yeah,
to me, to be able to run what Hugh Freeze runs.
And then after that, you got Florida International, which again, that's one that, I mean, barring half of your team's missing or something goes on, it's going to be a win, but it's going to be, hopefully this is not a win that you need to then beat Missouri to get bowl eligible. I think so many years you're down to those last couple of games where you're fighting to become, are you going to be bowl eligible? I think with the way we're talking about it, you're going to be bowl eligible well before this game.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's going to take a lot of stress off this team. They're going to play more freely. They're going to have the depth. They're going to be stronger. And that's where I think this is going to be one of them games where you're going to be not looking ahead, but looking ahead. And you're going to take care of business at the same time. And of course, you don't have to worry about this game being your last game. I think if this would have been the last game in Fayetteville, it would have kind of made it a little bit more edgy.
Mm-hmm.
But I see this as one of them blowouts because if I would to say they're not looking ahead, I'd be lying because you know who's next week.
Yeah. It's definitely, to me, it's a win. Get in, get out. I mean, I can kind of see this being one of those 11 a.m. games. Just get it over with, get the day going. And you don't want to take anybody for granted. You don't want to keep looking ahead, but they're looking at Missouri ready to get that game going.
Yeah. And that would be the last game of the season. And listen, KJ's not losing this game.
No.
Unless he's out. Unless he's out, he's injured. You've got Rocket and him, or you're happy. I don't know. If KJ's got to win this game in a wheelchair, he's going to muster the strength to win this game. He is not going to end his career in losing to Missouri. I'm sorry, Missouri fans, it's going to piss y'all off or whatever. Hey, we know how. You don't have to throw it in our face, or you don't have to bring up the record. We know. Arkansas is not losing this game in this season. They're just not going to lose to Missouri.
No, you're looking at senior day. You're looking at KJ's last game in Razorback Stadium. Plus, it's against Mizzou. Like you said, he's going to have to be taken out there in a wheelchair with a bloody whatever it is, whatever injury, which hopefully is not the case. But he's going to be out there come hell or high water, ready to go, ready to beat them. I think that Missouri will be looking at this game like they did last year. This game is potentially going to be the game that makes them bowl eligible. So they're going to come to play, but I think the seniors on the team, especially, are going to look. The whole team's going to rally around the seniors, especially KJ, to send them out on a high note.
This is going to be all theatrics until KJ hands his mom or whoever those flowers, and they're going to give him his standing ovation. And he's going to put his helmet on. He's going to clock in. He's going to go to work.
Oh yeah.
If I can guarantee you what game, of course you know what games you want to win. This is where we go back and forth on, is this game a rivalry? How much do you want to win that game? That tells you right there that this game is a rivalry because they want to win this just as much as any of these games.
And that's, one you hate for it to be shoved down your throat for so long, But when you look at it, and a lot of it is because of our record against Missouri, you want to beat them, you want to shut them up. So in reality, yes, it is. You may not want to put it up there with an LSU, or it's definitely not up there with, your Texas, especially Texas coming in, but it's still a rivalry game.
Yes. And it will be. I just think, again, I think that, and I was the same way when this first started with the forced rivalry and the forced trophy. But, when it started turning into, we see it on Twitter, we see the fan bases, how they go back and forth. I mean, the fan bases go back and forth. Arkansas wants to win it. You see Eli, what he does and his antics. And you know what? Until we beat them 2-3 games in a row, they have every right to sit there and be talking about, they have the upper hand in this rivalry. But
they do, but it also shows with their fans that without a doubt, Arkansas lives rent-free in their head day in, day out.
Well, and again, we talked about this is like the version of how Arkansas is to LSU. We always find a way to be that gnat, and we'll get them and we'll beat them. But LSU sees Arkansas as a lesser opponent, and Arkansas seems to always have their number. This is the same situation. But again, to wrap this, the breakdown down, I have them beating Western Carolina, Kent State, BYU, A&M, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Auburn, Florida International, and Missouri with a 9-3 record. I will lock it in. That's not going to change. I'm not going to waver away from it. That is my final answer on what I think this season's going to go. I just think that I just have, with everything that with KJ and Enos, Travis, let's throw Souders in there. What he's doing. You're seeing a lot of interaction with these assistant coaches and these position coaches. Cody, and what he's doing. You're seeing a lot of, and maybe that's why I'm saying what I am, because we are seeing stuff that's going on the inside. We are seeing things other than just from Sam Pittman. It gives you a little bit more hope, and you're seeing, when you're hearing these guys, we have this many guys faster, we have this many guys stronger. We're not having to go back on days. Everything is lining up where they could have a very successful season. Am I wanting to go on record saying they're going to go 12-0, 11-1? No. I mean, that's just, I don't think they have the depth to run the table, because it is still, it's still the SEC. But no, my final answer is 9-3.
See, and so I will lock mine in at the 8-4 with the losses to LSU, A&M, Bama, and Florida. And if you want my proof, I don't know if you can read that wherever my camera is. There's my proof of the 8-4. So it's on paper. I will keep this with all my little notes, and we'll revisit it when the time comes. But I've been back and forth to that 9-3, 8-4, but 8-4 is what my gut says.
Yeah. And I get it, and that's the thing. I mean, rightfully so, where you're at on those games and where we're at. It's just a lot of it is you want Sam Pittman to be your head coach for a very long time. You want him and Dan Enos to ride the ship and come to. It's almost like a movie, where these guys work together. Now they're coming back again. Let's get the band back together. We got AJ, we got Rocket. Let's get the band back together and let's see what we can do. And we're talking about chips on your shoulder. I think the way Sam and Enos are, I think they have a little chip on their shoulder too. They want to prove. Sam Pittman wants to prove that 9-3 season wasn't a fluke.
Yeah,
he wants to come back and prove that he can run an SEC offense.
Yeah, and that's one of those. If Arkansas were to happen to go, 10-2, 11-1, I will gladly say that I was wrong, and that there's somebody out there that knows more than I do. But for the time being, I can't see it. I'd love for it, but we'll see. We got 13 days left.
Yeah, and of course, we would love to be wrong and it be more than what we predict. I mean, I
will be glad to eat crow.
We'll eat crow on the show.
There we go. I'm sure we can find somebody to make it for us.
Yeah. Well, that will do it, Adam. Unless you got anything else to add, we've got we're going to have Coach Neighbors on the show some point this week, and with that, we'll have our first episode of season 2 of the Weekly Women's Sports Report. We'll have Coach Neighbors on this week, and we'll recap volleyball and soccer getting their season started. Women's golf, track and field's got some athletes running in some world events that we'll break down. But Adam, you got anything else to add?
Everybody just stay cool, stay hydrated. Any questions, comments, shoot them to us, whether it's in our DMs, on the page, to me and Porter directly. We'll start answering those on air just to get everybody a little bit more, see what y'all think, see what questions y'all might have for us.
Yeah, and that will be starting not this Monday, but the following Monday. Time being, we'll get the logistics on that between me and Adam on when we can roll with that. But we are going to start that Monday mailbag. We'll take 4 or 5 questions from the listeners, be a short 30-minute show to really kind of break down, get our listeners more involved when it comes to your questions and take the time to answer your questions and comments. We really like to do that on Monday. That way, if you have any questions about the previous game or you have questions about the upcoming game, we'll start that when the season. We'll probably do that all throughout football season, throughout basketball season. We'll just, depending on, we'll see how much the fans want to interact with that. But, yeah, that will be starting very soon.
All right. Sounds good.
Y'all have a good evening. Remember, we're brought to you by Bet Online and the Sterling Soap and Roastery Studios. For Porter Hayes and Adam Hall, we will catch you this week when we have Coach Neighbors on.